Hey gats, it's Ed Blaster Bud here. I've got an initial review for you today, a shoe from Asics, the Gel-Kayano 30. This has been a long-standing Asics shoe in their lineup, and for many it's been a marathon option. It kind of shares the same stable as the Nimbus 25 if you're after a little hint of stability. Gallons of cushion on offer here. Is this though a marathon option for me? Let's find out. Thanks for tuning in, people. It's always appreciated. Help the channel to continue to grow by hitting that subscribe button, but also give this video a thumbs up like. You know it makes sense. The Asics Gel-Kayano 30. This is a shoe that Asics have sent to me for review, though they're not vetting my views before my valued viewers get to see them. You get my honest opinions as per usual. I've got approximately 352 grams here in my UK size 11, US 12. It's around about 12.5 ounces. So it brings the Gel-Kayano 30 in slightly lower than the Nimbus 25, but only by a few grams. Heel stack here, I measure 44 millimeters of foam in the heel and about 34 in the forefoot, making for a 10mm drop. I have to say, on foot, that drop, it is actually quite prevalent. You can feel it. Asics lists this one in the sample size as having 40mm in the heel and 30 in the forefoot, so my measurements pretty much add up. Forefoot width here in the Kayano 30, we have about 12.5 centimeters and a whopping 10.5 centimeters in the heel. That does make for one of the wider shoes that I've tested out over the last few years. Comparable, I suppose, to the Invincible Run or the Nimbus 25 as well. This shoe retails for 180 Earth credits here in the UK, a premium price, but does it deliver in terms of a premium performance? We will start with the upper first as per usual. So obvious comparisons here in terms of the midsole with the Nimbus 25, but the upper sets this one apart from the Nimbus. There's a lot more padding here in the Kayano 30 across the top of the foot and back here in the heel. There's a considerable heel counter which is solid, very stable. In terms of the tongue, it is a booty construction that does sort of pass through forward to the front toe box. Certainly if you want your shoe to be plush and padded, this is the one for you. Lace length I found to be fine with a standard bow, and you're pretty much good to go as well if you use a runner's knot and those additional eyelets here at the top end. I found a good fit was easily achievable really. There's very little lace pressure over the top of the foot, mainly due to the padding here. That's going to be great for some people. For other people, you might just find it a little too sort of overly padded. Might get a little bit warm in there. The tongue really is quite squashy and compressive, so that could be top of your list for a marathon shoe. I like the fact that Asics have kept the overlays to the bare minimum aside from this one in the heel here. I think that's there to provide a little bit of extra rigidity. There's no real weird reflective pieces or anything. I do find it odd when companies advertise their shoes as being highly reflective when you get like a tiny little circle or a little piece at the back. That's pretty much all we got here, in fact. I found the toe box, even in some warmer temperatures here in the UK, to be reasonably breathable. It's not the best, not the worst, somewhere in the middle. It's always going to be a slightly warmer shoe, mainly due to the fact that you've got those quite built up materials here in the heel. I'm finding the shoe true to size, no need to go a half up or down. Ample toe box room here, and I think it's kind of being aimed as a long run or sort of marathon shoe, so it's tuned in for that. I think overall the upper serves the purpose really if you're looking for a plush shoe with a little bit of stability. It's a comfortable design. I've not had any rubbing or hot spots at all. Now I've got up to about 14 miles of testing in the shoe and it's been fantastic so far. For me, I think the main letdown here is those overly absorbative materials that they've used in the tongue and the heel. They really do sort of suck up the sweat. Ventilation could be a bit of a problem around the back here of the shoe as well. Just a little bit too much in terms of the upper for me personally. I'm going to give it a 2.6 out of 3 for the upper after my initial runs. Midsole, midsole, midsole now. So we have an absolute ton of that Asics Flight Foam Blast Plus material here in the Kayano 30. We've seen that featured in the Nova Blast 3 and the Gel Nimbus 25 as well. Though do be aware there do seem to be two versions of that foam. One is the Eco version, I think that's what we've got here. It's a little bit denser, slightly more firm than we have in the Nova Blast 3. It does make the shoe better for the environment, yes, but it is a firmer, denser feel underfoot. That's not to say that there isn't lots of cushion here. There certainly normally is, that is amplified by the Ortholite insole that comes within the Kayano 30. There's just a little bit less return and pop than you get from the standard Flight Foam Blast Plus. When measuring it using the Shure A durometer scale, I'm getting a rating of about 39 in the bulk of the midsole. Bear in mind that 28 is about the average score. The lower the number, the softer the material. Oddly, the medial chunk here in the midsole comes in quite a bit softer actually, around about 29. So that section there really is more on par with what we'd expect on the sort of average softness score. Just for comparison, the Pegasus 40s coming in at around about 32. This stuff is certainly aimed at impact protection more than energy return, I think. There is a section of pure gel here which is directly under the heel. I've got to be honest, I haven't really felt it all that much. I did want to cut through the strobel there to see if I could actually see it, but apparently it's there. There's some nice step-in comfort for this shoe, though it is certainly nothing like the Invincible run, for example, which is all out squash. I think maybe a little bit of the dense cushion here is lost on my stick-thin frame. So I think perhaps it is slight overkill for me in terms of the amount of foam that we've got here. Don't forget as well, the surface area is pretty considerable as well in terms of the amount of that foam formula. You know, I've run half marathons in the Liberate Nitro from Puma, or like the Adios 7 or something, so those work as daily shoes for me. Both are much lighter weight options than this, you know, by about 100 grams as well. So this is clearly aimed at people that want to dull those steps. It's all about impact protection. With that in mind, I think that's why I felt the shoe was okay, easy paces, but a little bit too much midsole for me to propel onto those faster reps or miles. Spot on for some long runs perhaps, but I do wonder how much of the foam cushion here is translating into weight. When you look at the Vaporfly 3, for example, that I just got to 100 miles in, that one's geared up to be the lightest as possible. All the weight's kind of distributed there towards the rubber and the foam, the barest of bare minimum in the upper. So I think really the Gel-Kayano 30 is aimed at being consistent, sort of like protection, conformity, and comfort as well. So I think if those are the things you seek, then you're in the right place with this shoe. I found at about 8.15 per mile-ish pace. That was pretty much where it fits for me. Though I did find that 10mm drop was getting in the way a little bit sometimes. Just felt like I was always consciously having to avoid hitting in the heel, and that's kind of where a lot of the foam is in this shoe. I tend to sort of land mid-foot, certainly when I'm running faster, but it just felt a little bit more of an effort to do that in this shoe. That 4D guidance system they've incorporated here into the medial side of the arch is very interesting. Normally these parts are made of a harder plastic that's a little bit more resilient, but here it's softer and more flexible. It's quite an interesting approach. I have to be honest, I didn't really feel any of the stability elements here all that much, though I think the main one that you will feel is the fact that your foot's kind of cupped in and around the back here. All the foam kind of rises up around the back of your foot. I have to say, I think the Nimbus 25 just feels a little bit more natural to me over the two. Oddly nimbler, despite the fact that the weights are very, very similar. So perhaps not the midsole for me for a marathon this time round. Feels fine, just running some easy or recovery pace miles. But for me, I think I just impact upon the surface of the midsole like a poorly targeted proton torpedo. I'll give it a 2.5 out of 3 for the midsole after my initial runs. Outsole now. In terms of the outsole, it's a very different approach to the Nimbus 25 here. The rubber sections are more segmented up, though we do have 3 sections here in the rear of the shoe made of Asics High Abrasion Rubber Plus. This stuff is really, really durable. I got a Shure A score of 70 for these sections here, and the other stuff in the other parts of the shoe about 56, so it is quite a bit more sort of dense, and I think that stuff's going to last the test of time. It's another thing that suggests that the shoe is kind of aimed at a slightly more aggressive heel strike. I can't see me running through any of the rubber here after hundreds of miles, and I think you'll probably have the same experiences. With my light landing style, it would probably take me a lifetime to get through this one. I do quite like the patterns here in the rubber. They're sort of like diamond shapes. There's only a few areas where material can get stuck between the ridges. I've got to be honest, that's something that really appeals to me. I don't want to spend hours, you know, cleaning bits of debris out of the outsole of a shoe. I can't help get the feeling though that they could have reduced some of the rubber down here a little bit, and it could have lightened up the shoe, made it a bit more nimble. Again, it feels like we've got features here that are aimed at making the shoe more stable, like more surface area to land on. On some slippery surfaces it performed just fine, although road and tarmac seem to be its forte. I just found myself aiming for the softer stuff here in the mid to forefoot of the shoe, and it's pretty good in terms of flexibility as well. Most of the areas of the rubber are decoupled from each other, and it helps the shoe to bend and flex a little bit in the mid to forefoot. So a very serviceable outsole here, does the job, it works, and I think the extensive coverage here is going to provide you with months and months, possibly years worth of durability. But again, for me, it's just too much rubber to handle. I just don't need it all. Just feel they could relieve the midsole and the outsole a little bit, and it's just going to make it a more nimble shoe. But I guess then you've got other stuff in the Asics catalogue for that. I'll give it a 2.6 for the outsole after my initial runs. Value now. So it's kind of like the other side of the coin for the Nimbus 25. If you don't need the stability elements that you've got on the Kayano 30, then go with the Nimbus. The upper there is a little bit more weight relieved, and it gave me a slightly better lockdown over the top of the foot. It just felt like it wasn't there quite so much as this one does. It's just a slightly more breathable feel, certainly through the tongue area. And it doesn't feature that medial section here that we get in the Kayano 30, so no doubt it's going to appeal to a slightly wider range of runners. Despite the foams being the same as well, I just feel the Nimbuses are a little bit more versatile across the paces, though I still wouldn't really call the Nimbus or the Kayano a pace shoe by any stretch. There's a lot of bulk there, and it does mean that it limits the versatility of the shoe somewhat. Quality wise, the shoe's great out of the box. I have to say, there's very few Asics shoes I ever get that I'm thinking, who on earth made this? Was it like a Friday afternoon job? You know, there's a premium quality about it, but you'd expect that at the premium price point that this shoe is at. I'd suggest I'm still erring towards the Super Blast over both the Nimbus and this one. That one's that bit lighter, it just disappears on foot. In fact, I'm wearing it right now. I barely ever take the Super Blast off. I've just been wearing it constantly for like a month. You can throw practically anything at that shoe, and I think it's got a little bit over these two. I think that's perhaps my favourite of these trilogy. If you're going to look at the Kayano, the Nimbus and the Super Blast, still occupies the top spot for me. Though, if you're after a marathon shoe, perhaps you're a heavier set runner, you want that protection, you want the plush feel, this one's got it, and it looks darn good as well. It's a beautiful profile to this shoe. It's a very specific shoe, I think, this one. If you don't need the medial support that's offered, then you probably go for the Nimbus. I'll give it a 2.5 out of 3 for value after my initial runs. It's a very locked in shoe in a whole variety of ways, but I think if you've liked the Kayano before, then you're probably going to like this one. Okay, I think that gives us a 10.2 out of 12 after my initial runs for the Gel-Kayano 30. Are you a big fan of this series? Have you picked one of these up? Are you enjoying it? Let me know your thoughts and experiences down in the comments. I have to say, this is one of the best looking shoes I've reviewed in a long time. I absolutely love the profile of it. Asics really knocking it out the park of recent time. A quick musical interlude for you. Fantastic album's been reissued from Neil Young and Crazy Horse. It's entitled Ragged Glory. Although this version of it's called Ragged Glory Smell the Horse. So it's basically a reissue of the Ragged Glory album, which I think came out in like 89 or 90. It's probably 1990, I think. Country Home's always been a favourite of mine, reminding me when I go to the city or something, I'm always quite glad to get back and away from all the smog and people wandering around looking at mobile phones. Being back in the country, you know, you can go for a walk and lose yourself, just seeing nobody aside from a kestrel or a shrew. Over and Over is a good tune as well. All of these are just sort of like garage rock, grungy sort of country rock numbers. Neil Young just decides to go off on a solo every now and then, and that's no bad thing. Mansion on the Hill, that's another cracker. Some really memorable guitar breaks in Ragged Glory, and I love the fact they end it off with Mother Earth, which is, you know, all about trying to keep the planet from going bad. And Neil Young was doing this like 33 years ago, so yeah, he was way ahead of all you guys. Go and check this absolute banger out, some super grungy Les Paul sounds. Ragged Glory from Neil Young and Crazy Horse. Thanks for tuning in, people. Do help the channel out by hitting that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up like. I really appreciate it. My name's Eddbud, and I'll be seeing you. Hey people, Eddbud here. Bit of bonus content for you. It's still really humid and kind of sticky today. Only did like about 4.5 miles just to get a few more miles into the Kayano 30s really, just to sort of solidify my opinions, and I think I'm pretty much there now. Certainly enjoyed the shoes, a lot of cushion on offer. It might be a little bit too much shoe for me. I'm quite a light guy. I weigh about 75 kilos I think, something like that. So I don't need masses and masses of sort of firmer cushion. I like the springy stuff that's nice and light. But I think that lots of runners out there will really enjoy this shoe. If you want that little bit of stability, there's a hint of it there on the middle side, but stacks and stacks of cushion. Could be a good one for people to run a marathon, half marathon, perhaps if you're a bigger built runner and you just want that, you know, protection, that sort of pillowy cushion that a lot of people like. So I think that's probably who it's going to appeal to. Right, I need some food, I'm starving.